Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. The Gemara says that it was already the takana of Ezra Sofer that we should read Kisavo before Rosh Hashanah, and it represents Tichle Shana v'Klaloseha, Tochel Shana v'Birchoseha. Let the old year go out with the curses. So we read the Tochacha, and that should all be associated with the year that's going out. So the curses go out with the year that's going out, and let the good times roll. Tachal shana v'birchoseha. Right? So the problem is that it never works out that way. Right? It's always that we have Parshas Nitzavim in between. We don't go directly from Kisavo into Rosh Hashanah. You'll always have Parshas Nitzavim in the middle. Right? That needs to be understood. And the way we lane is 1,000 years old. The Rambam discusses this already in Hilchos Tefillah, that we always have Parshas Nitzavim before Rosh Hashanah. So we have to understand how that squares away, that we're supposed to go from Kisavo into the new year with its blessings. Right? And we will come back to that shortly. But since right now we're in the Rosh Hashanah zone, from after Parshas Kisavo, that's Kisavo supposed to be associated with the year going out, and now everything's about the year that's coming in. So let's talk about Rosh Hashanah. So, Day of Judgment. Okay? So now we know that vidui is very, very important to escape severe judgment. Right? As the pasuk says in Navi, Mechaseh pshav lo yatzliach, someone who wants to conceal what they did wrong is not going to succeed. Vidui is very important to come clean with God. Right? The Mekubalim explain further that a person will try to conceal his sins. The Rebbe Shem gives his file to the Satan to prosecute. Right? You confess your sins to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he takes your file, and he will have mercy. Okay? Do we do vidui on Rosh Hashanah when we're actually on trial? No. Right? No, we do plenty of it before. Slichos, plenty of it after, for sure. Yom Kippur, we do it, even within the Nusach HaTfilah, do it throughout the 5 times. But Rosh Hashanah is the day you're on trial. This is the time to say good. If we're going to use the power of vidui, right, to get mercy, that the din should be b'rachamim, that the Rebbe himself will take our file, and he will prosecute with rachamim, as opposed to our file being handed to the Sitra Achra. So we should be doing vidui on Rosh Hashanah. So why is that not the case? So now, we know about the shofar, that when we blow the shofar, the Satan gets confused. And we have other sources, throughout our literature, that the shofar has a special quality, that it causes the Ribbon Shalom to move from Kisei Hadin to Kisei Arachamim. Right? It gets off the throne of judgment. Throne refers to Hanhaga, the way he's running things. He stops running things in judgment, and he moves it to mercy. So, what's going on? Is Day of Judgment not a day of judgment? Right? Does God want to judge us? Does he not want to judge us? It's like, I'm going to judge you, but here's the escape hatch. You don't want to judge, don't judge. Right? No, I don't want to judge you, but I'm going to give you the secret weapon of shofar, that the whole thing moves to rachamim. So there's a very interesting medrash in Parshas Emor regarding this. That the medrash is these are the midrashim. Parshas Emor mentions Rosh Hashanah, and these are the midrashim on the psukim over there. So the medrash brings in the pasuk from Tilm, Tiku bash chodesh shofar, on the day of where the Chag is Rosh Chodesh, which is Rosh Hashanah, it's Rosh Chodesh Tishrei. Right, Tiku bash shofar. So the medrash there says that shofar could also be like a play on words for shipur, to improve ourselves, right? And the Medrash goes on to say that HaKadosh Hu tells Am Yisrael, right? Im tishapru ma'asechem If you are shipur, right, you improve yourselves, I'm going to behave like the shofar. Ma shofar machnis bezu umotzi bezu afani omed b'kisei adin v'yoshev al kisei rachmim v'hofech lachem midas hadin l'mitzrayim. So also, just like shofar, you blow in one end, the sound comes out the other end. So also, I'm going to get up from the kisei hadin and sit on the kisei harachamim and convert the midas hadin into the midas harachamim. Right. Are the metaphor and the message symmetrical? No. Right. You blow in one end sound because that's a continuum. Right? Over here we're talking about switching sides. He flips from din to rachamim and flips to din to rachamim. So I want to talk about a natural straight continuum. Blow in this side, sound comes out the other side. And he said, just like the shofar, I'll be like the shofar, and I get up from the kisei adin, and I go sit on the kisei arachamim, and I convert the din to rachamim. So now let's visit our parsha. Rashi brings he first works through the first few psukim one way, in which he calls the simple pshat, and then he works through them, al derech hadrush. He is really taking from the Medrash Tanchuma, and if we have time, we'll actually visit the parts of the Tanchuma Rashi doesn't quote, but that's time allowing. So he says like this, Medrash Agoda, right? So a Medrash Agoda, which is the Tanchuma, in this case. Why do we have the Parsha of Atem Mitzvah right after all the curses of the Tocha of Parshas Kisava? The Jewish people heard 100 curses minus 2. It's 98 curses. Let's not forget about the 49 of the Tocha of Parshas Bechukosai. Right? So Horiku Prem, they turned green. Right? V'amru, and they said, Mi'acholamo be'elu, who could withstand this? Right? Hischel Moshe lefaisa. Moshe is now coming to calm them down, right, to appease them. And therefore Rashi now starts working through. So, Atem Nitzavim ayom, you are standing today. Harbe chastem l'makom v'lo aschem klal. Don't you remember you got the Rebbe Shem angry many times, and he never obliterated you. You are standing before him. Right, you're here today to talk about it, even though you did a lot of things to upset him. Hayom. So now Nitzavim Hayom. What's today? Hayom. Kayom azeshu kayom. Just like you are present, in the present, just like today. You surely are, as it is today. Vihu ma'afil umeir. This is what Rosh says. Now the day is to be understood in a broader context. Right, just like day is 24-hour period. Right, you have the dark side. The new day starts at night. Right, ma'afil, comes dark, umeir, and afterwards it becomes light. Kach yelchem v'kach osi larachem. So also God gives you light, and He is destined to give you light. Va'klolos va'yisurin mekayim neschem u'mitzil chazvav. But not only that, all these curses and all the pain is actually going to sustain you and stabilize you. Right, in front of the Rebbe Shalom. Right? All right, I'd like to know, it sounds nice, right? So we're going to throw the tochacha at you, all those, 98 clothes from here and the other 49. It'll make you a better person, right? You'll be a lot better for it, right? It'll actually reinforce your existence. Right? How do you understand that? So now there's a hint that was dropped here. It said, Nitzavim Hayom, you got to look at it like you look at the day, right? There's the dark side of the day, and there's the light side of the day, and the Rebbe Shem will give you light. Why? What about the dark side? Everything that's dark, everything that's dark is a metaphor for all the hard times, all the confusion, all the pain. Dark light, and the Rebbe Shem will give you light, but it's also dark. Right? And all this pain, it's going to make you more firm in your existence. Yeah. So it sounds nice. How? But then, before we get back to that, we see quite a open allusion to Rosh HaShanah. We already had one, but I'll explain that later. But in the next Rashi, since Am Yisrael was now switching hands, new administration, right? They're going from the administration of Moshe Rabbeinu to the administration of Yoshua. Also some matzeva, because there was this ceremony called matzeva. They all stand together, atem Nitzavim, in order to encourage them as the administration is about to shift. V'chein also Yoshua, and Yoshua also did this type of matzeva, this type of ceremony, like we're reading about in this week's Parsha. Right? V'chein Shmuel, and Shmuel also, before he handed over the administration from himself to Shaul HaMelech, also, they all did this, thing called matzeva, as it says in Shmuel, hityatzvu, when he's about to hand over the reins to Shaul. Hityatzvu, like Nitzavim, stand up. Right, Ve'shavta eschem, and it will pass judgment. Because as he did this as like they exiting his administration to the administration of Shaul. Now this is a very clear allusion to Rosh HaShanah. How so? The world exists only 1 year at a time, right? The administration of how this year was administered, what the weather was like, and what the economy was like, and everything that goes on in the world, that was all scripted on Rosh HaShanah and the Sifrei Chaim and the Sifrei Mesim. The chapter's over, right? That, everything that was legislated for Tafshin Pei Gimel is coming to an end, right? The new Rosh HaShanah, right, when we have the books open again to be scripted for what's going to happen in this upcoming year, that's a new administration, right? Everything that you know to be true is about to expire. It only exists 1 year at a time. If it looks like the same old story next year, it's really a different administration. It's just cosmetically similar to the year that was. But the Rebbe Shalom writes the chapters of history 1 year at a time. Right? So when things shift, when the administration shifts, we have this thing called matzeva, Nitzavim. And we'll understand what the significance of that is. All right. So, everyone's heard the famous Chazal, right? Ola b'machshava liboros b'midas hadin, Rosh eno miskayim omad v'shitif imo midas harachamim. God envisioned, right, creating the world with, the attribute of judgment, strict judgment. He saw that the world cannot endure that way. He added the attribute of mercy, and with that created the world. So we have that in our literature in a lot of places. God makes mistakes, right? Right? He knows the future before it happened, right? Saying, no, the world cannot stand, right? Bedin. So he contemplated. It was Allah b'machshava, libaros b'midas hadin. Right? So it is not going to work out. Added the rachamim, and with that he created the world. Oh, thank you very much. Oh, that's good. It's fine. Thank you. Right. So it's very interesting Tosfos, in Rosh HaShanah Daf Chaf Zayin. The Gemara, it discusses a machlokas, Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shua, what month was it when the world was created? Right, it's a machlokas. Rabbi Elazar says the world was created in Tishrei, meaning that means that it goes by when Adam was created. So Adam was created on, the sixth day of creation was Aleph Tishrei. That's the position of Rabbi Elazar. And Rabbi Yeshua says, no, the world was created in Nisan. That means Adam was created on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. That was the sixth day of creation. It's a machlokas in the Gemara. So Tosfos asks a very interesting question. Right, everyone's heard of the great poet who's made a lot of our piyutim come from him, Rav Elazar HaKalir. He was ancient, right? The Balei Tosfos handle and how to understand his piyutim. So Tosfos points out that he played both sides of the argument. In his piyutim for the month of Tishrei, be it Rosh HaShanna Yom Kippur, be it Sukkot, he plays the Rabbi Lezer card. Yeah, this is the month the world was created. Yeah, right? And then in his piyutim for the month of Nisan, month of Nisan, Pesach, he plays the Rabbi Yeshua card. Yeah, this is the month that the world was created. Right? Now, because it makes it all sound better, right? If this is the month, that's good stuff to put in your poetry, right? So Tosfos asks, how does Rabbi Elazar Kalir, who was ancient, some say he was a Tana, well, it's not clear to us, right, exactly when he lived, but it was old by the time of the Tosfos. All right, so how do you do that? How do you play both sides of the argument in your poems, that made it into the tefillah, right? For Tishrei plays Rabbi Elazar card. Yeah, this is the month of creation. And then, for the month of Nisan, right? So this is the Rabbi Yeshua card. This is the month that the world was created. So Tosfos brings from Rabbeinu Tam, Rashi's grandson, right? An amazing thing that you expect to hear from a Kabbalah book, right? Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim Chaim. They're both the words of the living God, right? B'tishrei ola b'machshava libaros v'lo bra ad Nisan. In Tishrei, God contemplated creating the world. Contemplated creating the world, but the world was created in actuality in the month of Nisan. It's a Rabbeinu Tam, so you think it's an Arizal. This is a Rabbeinu Tam, right? All right, so sounds great. Let's unpack it a little bit. So in Tishrei, the world was contemplated by God, and in Nisan, the world actually emerged. Physical reality emerged. But you should already have made some type of, seen a pattern. B'tishrei Allah b'machshava libaros. Now, what was that other chazal we quoted earlier? Allah b'machshava libaros b'midas hadid. So it's interesting. It fits the pattern. So he says, b'tishrei Allah b'machshava libaros. Right? And we know Allah b'machshava libaros midas hadin. And indeed, Tishrei opens up with din. Right? Shitif mamidas arachamim ubra'ah, but actual creation happened after after rachamim is added, right? And that's in the month of Nisan, which is a month of rachamim. Now we're done with Tachanun from Rosh Chodesh, right? We have a whole month without Tachanun, right? It's a month of rachamim, right? Nice, we see a pattern. But what that means is, what this Tosfos drives home to us is that the olah b'machshava is a reality. It wasn't like what we call in Gemara talk a havamina, a first initial thought that gets rejected. It's a reality, right? The world exists in thought, and it exists also in physical reality. And there's a lot to say about that, but for our purposes tonight, right? Nothing exists if it's not planned and if it's not designed. Not everything has a design to it. Right? Everything, just think about it. Everything's got its shape, its properties, be it its physical properties, be it its chemical properties, its spiritual properties. Everything's designed. Right? The design, and you have to take this into account, that before Allah b'machshava, there was no such thing as anything other than God himself. Right? So design is in itself the first act of creation. Right? Because otherwise there's no concepts in existence other than Ribono Shel Olam Alein, right? Ribono Shel Olam himself. So Allah b'machshava is the first step of actually creating. You've got to design it. So now, think about this for a second. All right? Design is actually an action of din. Right? Judgment. How so? Well, first of all, you have infinite possibilities. And you're limiting it, it's going to be like this. Right? That's a judgment statement. That's a legislation. Out of infinite possibilities that the Ribono Shel Olam could have had, It's going to be kacha, like this, as opposed to like anything else, like this. That's an act of legislation. Right? But in design, you're setting up, all the rules of how it should be. It's all an act of din. Right? Now, you know it is. You guys ever design something? Probably more often than your husband wants you to, right? Right? Renovations, all right? All right, so you bring in the architect, right? And it's got to look like this, like that, and it's got to be done by. Does it ever happen? Never, right? Never, right? So if you don't want to go out of your mind, you got to be flexible, right? Flexible. It's not going to be exactly the way. And it's not going to be. It certainly won't be on time. That for sure not, right? That's what I mean. Shitif mamiyas arachmim ubra'ah, right? The physical reality, nothing in physical reality is ever perfectly according to plan, right? The shitif midas arachmim is to add some flexibility and call it being realistic. Being realistic. Right? That's matter. If anyone's ever studied the philosophy of Plato, right? The physical world never keeps in perfect step with the world of ideas. That's what we're kind of talking about over here. All the machshava, right? The design, and then the shita mius rachamim. Right? But it goes deeper than that, right? The sun came up this morning. Is it going to come up tomorrow? What? Yes? You're sure about that? Right? Why are you so sure? Why are you so sure? What? Explain it to me. I'm worried about it.
Because it's come up every single other day.
Until now. We got lucky. Yeah. I'm waiting. All right. Laws of nature. Laws of nature. You hear what you're saying? Laws of nature. The Rebbe Shem creating the world B'din initially gave us stability, right? Imagine like this: a person, you said, because you posited the concept of the track record. So let me ask you like this: you need a ride to work, and you have a neighbor that goes in the same direction for 20 years. You hit your ride, right? Right. Then after 20 years, the neighbor says, I sold my car. I can't do it anymore. And you didn't ask me first. No, what's wrong with that statement? Because it was just chesed. And in chesed doesn't have to be. If it's benevolence, there's, as we would call it, no chiyuv, there's no obligation. And that's why you cannot complain. There's a 20-year track record, right? You can't have any type of complaints that it's not continuing because it was all chesed, right? It was all kindness. Din, now here. So let's say you were paying your friend, right, for those rides. No, then indeed you have a legitimate claim because if let's say you pay, let's say on Sunday for the whole week that's coming. And she tells you on Monday she sold her car, right? So rent a car. You're obligated. I paid you for this week, so you're going to have to rent a car. No, I'm not. Whatever. You take this to Rav Roisman and Din Torah if this really happens. I'm not. All right. The Rebbe Shalom, by contemplating the world b'midas hadin, gave the world stability. Right? It's to our benefit. If the world would be built on pure chesed, there's no chiyuv in chesed. There's nothing that obligates. So it could be here today and gone tomorrow. It's all just on whim, as a favor. So now you can understand a little bit deeper what Chazal, it's, in many of our sources, but the one who explained it the most was the Ramchal. In all his form, in the Derech Hashem, in the Das Tzvunos, right, that the Rebbe Shem created the world to bestow kindness. Right? But, so why do we have to work so hard, to earn our Olam Haba? Right? So what does Ramchal say? So it shouldn't be Nahama de Kisufa, it should not be bread of shame. Right? It shouldn't be charity. Right? This is not just like some type of psychological hang-up, because the kids of today, they have no problem taking handouts, right? It's not he creates with some type of self-esteem bug in the head that we just can't be happy with. I've seen people overcome this psychological problem very well, right? Right? It's a lot deeper, right? Of course, God wants to do good, but He wants you to earn it. Then He owes it to you, and if He owes it to you, it must happen. We are trying to attain with our mitzvahs immortality. That means that we're forced to exist. Must exist. We earned it. So Rebbe Shem creating the world with Midas Hadin was totally for our benefit, to give stability, to make Himself obligated to us in the framework of Din that He created. He'll owe us our Olam Haba. You must get your Olam Haba. If you've made the grade, you must live forever in Olam Haba. Must. It's a law. All right? Except you got to be a little bit flexible. But now, if Midas Hadin, is the first step in creation, right? If Midas is the first step in creation, so that means, if it's not, creation won't come to fruition if we don't add Rachamim. So therefore, is the Midas Hadin, so to speak, upset if Rachamim is added, if that's what it takes to bring the world to full actuality? No. Because the Midas Hadin exists for the purpose, first step, of being the bedrock of reality. Right? So the Midas Hadin itself would want to be added to Midas HaRachamim to fulfill its function of bringing forth the creation. And that's what we mean, all of the Machshad Basrin, Rosh, Shita Mitzrachim Bra. It doesn't mean that God thought it could work out this way. No. No, this was all steps of the creative process. Right? And indeed, we go through this every year. The plan, the script, the design, right, the blueprint, that's all Din, like we explained, that's on Rosh HaShanna. That's what's inscribed in the books of life and death. This is the plan. This is the blueprint for the year. Right? But if you live in the northern hemisphere, when does the stuff actually start emerging? Like the crops that were legislated. Right? That there'll be the bounty, that the Rebbe Shem wants to give you. So when do we actually start seeing that stuff? When we start seeing the results? In the spring. Chodesh Aviv. That's when things start blossoming. So the script is on Tishrei, right? And the actual birth, right, is on Nisan. Right? So the Olav Machshava, with Sol Din, is on Tishrei. And the Shita Mitzrachim Ubra is in Nisan. And you know what that's like? It's like having a child. There is the conception, and that's when the gene map, right, the gene map is complete, and it's all b'machshava. It's in concept. The whole gene map has been set at the time of conception, and then there's the actual birth. Let's look at the wonders of Lashon HaKodesh. What do we call the state of pregnancy in Lashon HaKodesh? Hirayon, right? What's the root of the word? Hirhor, thought. And the moment of conception, right? So the gene map, the plan is there already. But it can't live that way. Eino miskayim. It's got to sit where? It's got to sit where? The embryo? You guys should know this, right? It's got to sit in the womb. What's the Hebrew word for womb? Rechem. And that's the secret of shitefimo midas harachamim ubra'a. After conception, you have to add what the rachamim, and then it could develop and actually be born. So relying on Chazal, that a term of pregnancy could be either 9 or 7 months, one or the other. Right? So conception to birth, right? Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev, Teves, Shvat, Adar, Nisan. The conception is on Rosh HaShanna. The birth is 7 months later on Nisan. Maybe the full birth, bringing the whole new year into full actuality. And that's what we say in our, in our davening. Hayom Haras Olam. Today is the day of conception of the world, not the birth. Haras Olam. So now, there's a Gemara in Nedorim, and it's in a few places in Chazal, about a future event that's going to happen. Otzo HaKadosh Baruch Hu Lotzi Chama Min Artika. Rebbe is destined to take the sun out of its sheath, whatever that means, not beyond the scope of today's topic. Take the sun out of its sheath. Tzadikim misrapin ba v'rishoyim shenemar shemek stoko marpe v'rishoyim nidonim ba. So it's these amazing rays that come out of the sun that's removed from its sheath. Tzadikim are healed. If they have any ailments, they're healed. Right? The Rishoyim are vaporized by that light. That's what's going to be. It's going to be an event that's going to happen in the future, right? By the great judgment day, right? The boss is going to give these amazing rays, right? But think about this for a second, right? They're under the same light. These guys are tanning at the same beach at the same time. The tzaddikim and the Rishoyim, right? Under the same rays, right? And the tzaddikim, they get stronger, right? Right? And the Rishoyim get vanquished. How's that possible? This is what we're discussing. Of course, those rays refer to the Rebbe Shalom's attribute of judgment. But judgment, in essence, exists for our own good. For our own good. To make us, first of all, stabilize existence, the stability of Midas Hadin, like explained, and also to make us virtuous, that it's called, we have merit, we earned it. Right? So, the tzaddikim that have aligned themselves with Midas Hadin, right, they get stronger when the Midas Hadin is strong, because they and the Midas Hadin are on the same side, and the Midas Hadin does its action of reinforcing existence. The problem with the Rishoyim, right, is that they position themselves oppositional, right? Because they don't want to accept the Rebbe Shalom's laws, right? So the laws vanquish them, but not because in essence they are a destructive force. They're in essence a constructive force, right? Just the Rosh positions himself as such in opposition to the Rebbe Shalom's law and order, because he doesn't want to accept that law and order, right? The Ramchal he has a book called the Derech Eitz Chaim, and he discusses. We say, "Kol my davim and shmaya l'tav." Everything God does for the good. I don't know. It doesn't feel that way, right? There's chesed and there's din. So he says an amazing thing, right? Right, that to administer health, right? To be a healthcare provider, this is his mashal. To be a healthcare provider is a most wonderful kindness, right? Give health, heal, right? So now that can involve, for the proper person, the particular patient, just giving nutrition, good nutrition, and other therapeutics that are a pleasure, right? But then you have this thing that has to be surgically removed. It's still for the same agenda, to make the person healthy. There's what has to be supported and reinforced, right? And then there's what has to be removed for the same agenda, to keep the person healthy, right? The Rosh positioned himself as the wart that's got to be removed from the cosmic body. Right? So if you're on the same side as Midas Hadin works for you. And the Midas Hadin itself would want to be combined with the mercy if that's what you need to sustain you. If you do not accept God's law, right, so because you position yourself oppositionally to the law, that's why that law will vanquish you, because of the way you positioned yourself. Now, I always give another metaphor when I teach this. Right, you test out your new oven, crank it up, 550. Right, and you put into the oven a block of ice, piece of paper, and one of those, when Shabbos comes in too early, right? It's one of those Betty Crocker cake batters, right? We cheat a little, right? So, all right, so now it sits in the oven. The slab of ice goes from solid to liquid, right? The cake batter went from liquid to solid, right? And, the paper caught fire. Schizophrenic oven. Does it make things soft? Does it make things hard? Or does it incinerate things? What's the answer? The oven's doing its thing, given heat. And just like Ribono Shel Olam Lahavdil, he's just being mated. The difference is in the recipient. The difference is in the properties of the recipient. Right? The difference of what would happen over here, ice, when it gets heat, it melts. Cake batters, when it gets heat, they go hard, right? And, and things like, flammables, ignite. Right? The difference is in the receiver, right? Not in the energy source. It's just doing its thing. Same thing. The Ribono Shel Olam is only giving us good, right? Including with this Midas Hadin, that was for our good. Like we said, it gave us stability. It gave us the opportunity to be virtuous and to be meritorious, to be merit Olam Haba, which makes Olam Haba really owed to us. The Rosh, that recipient of God's energy, positions himself as being in opposition. So of course, that same energy that's good for the tzaddik incinerates him. So now, what if you're 50-50? A Benoni. So, since the Ribono Shel Olam will undoubtedly lean your judgment to life, so when you get hit, with, God's energy, it'll hurt a little bit, but ultimately you'll be healed. It's kind of like a painful therapy. Right? But it's for your good, because you'll be carrying that contamination that will be your undoing. The Ribono Shel Olam hits you with his Midas Hadin, and it cleans you up. And now you're healthy. But removes the contamination. Right? Let's re-examine, with everything that we said, the Rashis in Parshas Nitzavim. And then we'll take it back to, what we opened up with. Right? Hayom Mazeh. Right? So Rashi says, take from the name of Chazal. Take an example from the day itself. Shu Kayam, it exists. Vuhu Mafil Meir. It has a dark side and it has its light side. Kach Heir Lachem ve'kach Asid Laher Lachem. So as you point out, it has a dark side, and then you ignore the dark side, say, but the Ribono Shel Olam has given you light and will continue to give you light. Okay? Yeah, of course, there's a dark side, right? There's the Midas Hadin. But you know that the dark side is what brings in the new day. The new day is ushered in by the night. And you know from halacha that the main the main point of any holiday, right? The main point in time, is the daytime. So in halacha that your best food has to be served by the morning Suda, Shabbos, right? And that's the same thing in Yom Tov, right? But the day, we call it the day for a reason. The daytime is the ikr of the day, but the nighttime is a necessary step to get there. But it's just a stepping stone. It's it's dark and it's light, but the light part is the main thing, and the light part is what endures. So yes, there's a dark side. There's the midas hadin that is not pleasant at the time, but it gives way to light. It leads into the light. And this is already another remez, I said before. This was a subtle remez to Rosh HaShanna. And we'll tighten it in a minute. But L'David Hashem Ori. Hashem is my light. What do the Mefarshim, what do the Medrashim say that refers to? Ori b'Rosh Hashanah. Ori. And we say, Ad shetotzi ka'or mishpatenu. God, you'll bring out like light our judgment. Light is referring to Rosh Hashanah. And that's also Hayom. It's actually referring to Rosh Hashanah. Right. So Rashi goes on to explain. Right? And all the curses and all the pain, actually, they reinforce your existence and make you stand stable before Him. As I explained, for anyone who's not a Rosh Hashanah, which we are told, we're taught that that's most Jews. Most Jews ultimately will be saved, right? In one way or another. And one of the ways that they get saved, the Ramchal says, is through the Klaus and Yisur. They're mechaper, right? They are medicine. We said tzadikim misrapim, but just the tzadik gomor, when he gets those rays, they don't hurt at all. He just feels immediately energized because he's totally good. The Rasha that's totally bad, right? He immediately gets vaporized by those rays. The guy in the middle, which is most Jews, right? So it doesn't tickle, right? But ultimately, Nitzavim eschem u'mekayim eschem. It's for our own good. And it is for your own good, right? If you're on the same side as the law. Be on the same side as the law. So now we go back to that medrash that we quoted from Parshas Emor. Bonayim shepartem ma'asechem ha'inaslechem k'shofar hazeh mashosu machnis bezu motzi bezu afani omei mikisei adin v'yosha kisarachim v'ovchem as midas adin mi'asarachim, my children. If you improve yourself, right, I will be like the shofar. Just like in shofar, you blow in one side, the sound comes out the other side. So also I get up from the kisei adin and I sit on the kisei arachamim and I convert the din to rachamim. So yes, seemingly it's not symmetrical. One is a direct continuum. You blow in, of course, it comes out the other side. This is about switching sides. No, it isn't. With what we explain, you understand, it's also a continuum. Midas Hadin leads into Midas Harachamim, and as a word, for lack of a better word, voluntarily wants to be converted into Midas Harachamim, wants that, for the purpose of sustaining creation. But it's a continuum that din goes to Rachamim if you and the Midas Hadin are on the same side. If we're on the same side, right, we're in the same direction, so the Midas Hadin works for you, it's behind you, literally. And it pushes you towards Rachamim, but you've got to be going in the same direction, not against the Midas Hadin, but with it. Right? And that's really what the shofar represents. Shofar is not to escape the Ribbon Shalom's Midas Hadin. It is actually to move the din to Rachamim. It takes too long to explain right now. But the Zohar says, and some people say this in the Zohar before the Tkiyas, that what happens in Shemayim every year on Rosh Hashanah is a reenactment of the famous story of Yitzchak wants to give the brachas. Esav wants to get the brachas. Yaakov beats him to it. Right? And Hakol Kol Yaakov, says the Zohar, is the Kol HaShofar. And Yitzchak, who's Midas Hadin. That's why Yitzchak is Midas Hadin, as we know. Right? He turns towards Yaakov, who's the Midas Harachamim. And then there's tremendous simcha in the world. The shofar is to bridge the Midas Hadin with the Midas Harachamim for the creative process of creating the new year. It's to make the connection, not to dispel the din, but to connect it to the Midas Rachamim, right? And it works for anyone who's on the same side as the law. So if you're on the same side as the law, right, the law works for you, not against you. If you position yourself oppositional to the law, yeah, and then the law, of course, demands your removal from reality. On Rosh HaShanna, right, where we accept the Rebbe Shem as our king, that's not a time to be saying sorry. Any criminal is caught will say sorry. On the day that they catch Biden, even he will say sorry. I mean, if he, alert enough. Right? Of course, everyone says sorry when they're caught. There's no kunz in that. On Rosh Hashanah, when we accept the Rebbe Shem as our Melech, we have to say, Rebbe Shem, we're with your law. Your law is life itself. Now, it takes too long to explain, but how do we define existence? So it's a big philosophical question. What does it mean to exist? Is there a chemical composition to existing? In Kabbalah, we say, the midah of Malchus is existence itself. And the midah of Malchus is law, the law of the king. Right. The first step in renewing creation, right? And the first step of making amends with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is to accept him unconditionally as our king, and we have declared our allegiance to his law, no matter what the consequences. You understand it also that, that's after that to say sorry for the next 9 days of Sesame Tshuva is legit because you are serious about accepting him as your king. Without that, what's sorry? Everyone says sorry. But it's more than that. On Rosh Hashanah, right, when the Rebbe is being Yoshev B'din, the biggest thing that we can do is to declare, Rebbe Shem, we're your people. We accept your din upon us. Right? It's not a time to say sorry and try to skirt around. Right? It's a time to declare that we and the Rebbe Shem's law and order, we're on the same side. And if we're on the same side, then the law is not against us. The law works for us because we're all on the same side. We're all here to build the world that Hashem wants to build. And we're doing it for his sake. He wants to be a melech, we'll be his nation. Right? That's the avodah in Rosh Hashanah. Right? Where we're Yoshev B'din, we're being Omed B'din, so on. I accept the Rebbe Shem's din as reality itself. I don't want any other life other than the life that comes from Rebbe Shem's din, because any life outside Rebbe Shem's din is not even real. Because at the bedrock of reality is the Rebbe Shem's law and order. And on top of that, there's rachamim to cushion it out. Right? I want the Rebbe Shem's din. I accept him as our king. Right? I accept him that his law is not darkness, it's or. It's light. Like, what was the first thing created? Light. It's or. Hashem Ori. Right? Achetotzi Ka'or Mishpateinu. It's light. It's not darkness. It's light. It's existence. It's the beginning of existence. His law is the beginning of existence. Right? And we have to accept that that's the type of life we want. We want the life of his law. Right? We want to be his subjects. We want to be on the That's the avodah of Rosh Hashanah. But here is the clincher, right? This is not just advice, to make it through Rosh Hashanah. This is the advice to make it through life itself. Right? Rashi didn't quote the Tanchuma, that the beginning of the Tanchuma, that his pirush is based on. And the Tanchuma brings a pasuk Right? Hafoch l'rashayim ve'enam u'bais tzadikim yamar. Hashem flips through the deeds of the wicked, and they are no longer. And the house of the tzadikim stands forever. That's a pasuk. Right? And the Medrash says something very interesting. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu flipped. It's also hafach. He flipped through the Dor Hamabel. He flipped through them, and they were no longer. He flipped through the Dor Haflaga, and they are no longer. They flipped through. But the tzaddikim who are with Hashem, they stand forever. So the Tiferes Yosef of Radzin explains, what is the Russia thinking? He has a plan. What's his plan? What's he thinking? What? I can't go broke. I'm very well invested in the stock market, right? Right? Or I'm not going to get swamped. I live, somewhere very high up, high altitude. So if there's a tsunami, it won't reach me. Yes, there are certain things he depends on. So what this Tanchum is saying, an amazing thing. Rebbe doesn't even have to hammer you directly. All he's going to do is flip out the thing you're relying on, and everything collapses. Right? The Dor HaMabel had it all figured out. Rebbe just flipped. He changed the circumstances that they were relying on. Dor HaFlaga, and that's the way it is. Right? Everyone thinks they have it figured out, and that's why they don't need God, because they depend on something else. All the Rebbe has to do is just pull the carpet out. The thing that they're standing on, that they're relying on, just pull it out. Right? Right? But the tzaddikim, they put their faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't change. There's no flipping out HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He is. He is and always will be. And that's why the tzaddikim, based tzaddikim yamor. Hafoch Rashayim. By the Rashayim, you don't even have to hit them. Just flip through whatever they're relying on. Just pull out the thing that they're relying on. That they collapse by themselves. Right? The house of the tzaddikim stand. Right? Because they rely on HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. We asked that, Rosh Hashanah should come in immediately after Parshas Kisavo. Parshas Kisavo is, the idea of everything bad we should view. The bad goes out with last year. And Tachel Shana Birchoseha, right? The new year starts with all its blessings. Right? So why do we read Parshas Nitzavim? Obviously, Nitzavim doesn't belong to last year. Nitzavim is a pre-Rosh Hashanah message. Parshas Nitzavim is Erev Rosh Hashanah. Parshas Nitzavim is a message for Erev Rosh Hashanah. It belongs to the new year. Atem Nitzavim hayokochem b'fnei Hashem Elokechem. Why did they do this thing? That whenever they changed administration, Rashi says, they did a matzeva. Why? Because new administration means everything you thought you had figured out is about to change. Everything you thought you had figured out is about to change. Right? So you'll be standing on nothing. Because that everything that you had figured out has expired, is no longer relevant. So where's your security going to come from? In changing times, in changing circumstances. Because everything you had figured out was based on these circumstances. Those circumstances are gone. What's the answer? Right? That you want to survive the transition of one set of rules to a new set. How you're not going to fall out in the middle before the new set of rules kick in that you'll learn and figure out and utilize. Atem nitzavim hayom kulchem. You want stability? Be lifnei Hashem Elokechem. Never rely on anything except God himself. Stability doesn't come from relying on money and not relying on it, because that all changes. And it changes naturally with every year that goes out, because the administration of every year, like I explained, is legislative, and it's only 1 year at a time. It all expires on Erev Rosh Hashanah. So it's a big transition happening. How are you going to survive the transition? Well, the transition is irrelevant, because we don't rely on these factors, and we're not relying on factors that we hope come in. We just rely on God himself. Atem nitzavim, you want to be stable, you have to be lifnei Hashem Elokechem. And that's how you survive the shifts and the turnabouts of life. Everything that's called how the universe was administered until now, that could all change, right? And your guarantee of survival is that you are never depending on those rules. You're always standing before Hashem himself. So Parshas Nitzavim is an Erev Rosh Hashanah parsha, right? You want stability, right? Position yourself before God. That meaning that always just rely on him, and that's stability, because he's always there and he doesn't change. Right? And that's why Parshas Nitzavim is an Erev Rosh Hashanah message. It's a message for the new year coming in, how we're going to survive the transition as the old goes out. So Parshas Ki Savo, as the old goes out, all right, how am I going to make it until the new comes in? Right? That's Parshas Nitzavim. Always just rely on HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, nothing else, and then your existence is stable because he's always there and he doesn't change. Right? And that is the shpitz, that is the point of our avoda, right, on Rosh Hashanah, just to accept him as our absolute king, without thinking about how that may not tickle initially, right? But the main thing is to make that unconditional commitment to his law. And then the Midas Hadin itself demands Rachman for us to be Baruch Shalom. L'shana Torah techasemu techatemu. Thank you very much.